All right.
Thanks, Houston. 5, 4. Hello and welcome back to Hot Springs Village Venues with what I think is an extra special edition of Hot Springs Village Venues. We are with the granddaddy, as it were. You're not that old, but John Cooksey, who basically has started all this. John has a program, a sister program called Hello Hot Springs, filmed in this exact studio. And we met on Facebook, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, probably about 3 years ago. Just had a lot of stuff in common. And we both like technology and we both like real estate. So you've been doing things with real estate, buying and selling, and I have too. In the last 7 months ago, I became officially a realtor with Hot Springs Realty, and I'm enjoying it. And have seen the growth in Hot Springs really torpedo, perhaps, would be the right word, in the last few years. Now, how's that going with Hot Springs Village?
You know, it's the best time to buy ever.
As any realtor would tell you.
Anyway, we joke about that. Realtors, it's always the best time. 2008, it's the best time. It's crashed. It's the best time. Yeah. The bottom line in the Village is that there's always, just like anywhere in real estate, there's a good fundamental.
Yeah.
And when that fundamental is at the right point, it's the right time to buy, obviously, right? For me, just the way I see it, and I think I've even shared this, but if you want an interest, I've actually have an article on public radio where we actually talk about how it's insane to live in a major city. I mean, to pay that amount of rent, to never be able to get ahead. You will never get enough equity in your overinflated home to get back where you're out. Sure. Whereas back in the Village, I think that the rates, our property values have stayed low and they're gently climbing back up.
Right.
But the Village, different from Hot Springs, 3, 2, different from Hot Springs.
Wait, start with a wider shot so we can cut it easier.
Yeah, thank you.
In other words, keep it going, but go to a wide shot.
Yeah, we can still hear the echo just a little too, Houston, okay?
All right, pick it up here. It'll give them a better cut.
It will, thank you. Excuse me. But in Hot Springs, not so much, but in the Village, we've had this really slow, steady, gradual growth. And what's happening in the Village, in my opinion, is the Village is an optional community. You're not going to get transferred there for a business.
That's true.
You know, you don't have to live in the Village.
Right.
It is an option. So in my opinion, we are the last place to see the rise because as people have gained prosperity, they want to come and basically live in a retirement community or a resort community. And then as it begins to fall back down, we fall quickly because, we can't afford to live there anymore. Or not afford to live there. We got to move back home and be with our kids or whatever, you know. And we've seen those trends. Every place has seen those trends. But what I wanted to talk with you about, John, and we've missed this opportunity for a year easily, is that I think there is a synergy coming together. The casino, the hiking trails, the biking trails,
the new highway,
the 7 bypass that's going to come in. I keep literally, my wife has lived with me in the Village for 8 years now, and I keep saying, you don't know how this is going to be different. They're cutting the trees as we speak.
I have to get some footage of that with it.
I'd love to see that.
Well, okay, so here's my take on it.
Let me interrupt you just for a second. Remember we had Jim and Andrea last week? Jim and Andrea actually own a cabin right where that road is going to go through. No. So they know that they're cutting the trees and everything. Yeah.
So I think what we're dealing with is the fact that around the country, you have legacy retirement costs in New Jersey and all places that have been populated forever.
Sure.
So they have so much of a tax bill just to pay all the retirees up there. The cities, it's going to stay high in taxes. People move down south as they get older. They want the warmer weather. But also, there's so many people that are digital nomads now that can live anywhere in the country.
People that live on private contractors.
Someone might just decide, I just love driving Uber and I want to go somewhere else, you know, and go up in this area. And what do they get here? Low taxes, reasonably low housing prices, mountains, low pollution, low traffic, and pretty reasonable prices.
Ease of lifestyle. I mean, a much slower paced lifestyle. Exactly. It's not the rat race. It's not... You know, as I talked about on the radio interview I did with NPR, the actual interviewer that I talked with was saying, this is me. And I said, what do you mean that's me? He said, I'm 40 plus. I live in a two-bedroom apartment with a roommate that I really don't care for that much. I make a pretty decent salary, but it's all spent. I basically commute an hour each way on a subway. And I'm like, and you're in the city? And he said, yeah. And I was like, This isn't the
what
quality
city?
of life I don't think you're looking for.
In what city?
And he was in New York.
I know a lot of people are moving out of LA area. A lot of people are moving out of Austin. And a good amount of people are moving out of Dallas. I think they're tired of a lot of the traffic and the hustle and bustle.
Yeah.
And if you can have a digital nomad job, like I know a gentleman that's a regional trainer for a big car company, and so he just drives 2 or 3 hours, some days a half hour, that kind of thing. And I know somebody that works for a large major accounting firm, and she flies out twice a month and just stays here.
Well, it's funny you say that. We have a guy who he's quit now, but we have a guy in the village who's actually an engineer for Tesla.
Wow.
And so he's telecommuting, ever to California every day, but a couple of times a month he hops a plane and drives out. Now I'll back up. He's actually quit that job now that he's moved to Hot Springs Village, and he now runs a CBD store.
Wow.
Where they're extracting the CBD paste, which we need to do a show on.
We could do that.
That is fascinating. But anyway, your digital nomad point really is to the fore. And and you've talked about this before on your shows and in other presentations. Right. You're saying, well, an Uber driver, if they want to go somewhere else and make a lifestyle, they can do that, and that's true.
Right.
But you and I both know, as Uber goes to driverless cars, which we think is, it's coming, it's going to be here. Come. That whole business change, I mean, for example, I have a friend who's a travel agent. A travel agent? They still do that?
I can't believe it. Yeah.
When I started in printing when I started in IT work 28 years ago, there were like 250 printers in the phone book. Today there are 7. Well, in the phone book. That's a joke too, right? Who sells phone books anymore?
Well, here's the deal. You get here and 12 years from now your job is replaced with a self-driving car. You love it so much here that you'll find something else to do with your connections. Everybody you adapt. It's just
Diane and I many times at night we'll fall asleep and we'll flip on something silly on the TV and we'll watch how it's made. And there's a production line and there's a guy putting a ball bearing onto a production ball. And he does that all day long. And I'll turn to Diane and go, that guy does that all day long. And we see where, robots are going to displace people.
Sure.
Well, robots are going to displace that guy that puts a ball bearing on every day.
As well as the Uber driver.
As well as the Uber driver.
But I think this will be a big tourism industry. I do think there will be more leisure time. There might be even universal basic income. We might have universal health care. I'm not advocating for these things or not saying. I'm just saying they may be coming, just like self-driving cars. I'm not necessarily advocating, but I have to be honest. They're going to come,
Yeah, there's a technology wave that's not stoppable.
Really. Right. So I think we're well positioned here in Arkansas because it's hot, but it's not as hot as Austin. Austin, or I should say
or
Houston.
Even Dallas. Oh my God. Or Atlanta.
Yeah.
Or as they call it, Hotlanta.
Hotlanta, yeah. And I don't think people like the traffic in Atlanta. Atlanta. It's a good slow pace here. I'm seeing a lot of people wanting to buy $60,000, $70,000 houses, put 20 or 30 into them, and rent them out.
Did you hear the words coming out of your mouth, John?
What?
$60,000 or $70,000 house. There are people in our United States that would think there's no such thing. They don't exist.
I just looked up some today, 50, 60,000. But again, you're going to be at 100,000 by the time you're done. But what's happened is, in Hot Springs, you've had what used to be somebody would buy a house and go, I'm not putting anything to it. I'm going to charge $450, $500 a month, and I'm not even going to credit check the guy. Oh, just let him stay there. That's my investment. I mean, I ain't going to do anything in the house. Now people are going, wait, I'm going to buy that house, put $15,000 into it, and make it an Airbnb.
Right.
So the question is, will we be flooded with too many Airbnbs? The answer is yes. The question is, what year will that be? 2025 or 2021?
As always, just like the self-driving cars or the other technology things, the blue chips are going to rise to the top. The blue chips, I'm hoping for ourselves. Right. We have blue chips that are on the lake and on the Gulf and all that stuff. Those blue chips, if you got the option to stay for $85 a night on the lake with a boat dock and kayaks and a hot tub, versus $85 a night overlooking a parking lot in the middle of town.
Yeah, and I should say, when I talk about saturation, it doesn't mean nobody will make money. It'll be the people that are right in the middle of historic downtown. For example, my vacation rental is about 2 miles from historic downtown. People would come 7, 8 years ago and go, oh my gosh, you're so close. Now I'm being thwarted by the people that are right downtown, some very low income-ish rental houses downtown at the end of Ramble Street are being turned into really nice vacation rentals. Why? Walking distance to historic downtown.
I got to ask you, and maybe you know about this or not. I don't. For example, here in Hot Springs, behind Salsa's, you know where Salsa's is, the Mexican restaurant down on Central. Behind that, they built a 5-story, 80 hotel room, probably $60 million hotel, a courtyard type deal, whatever.
Beautiful. I've been inside there. It's great.
Really nice hotel. Don't they know that Airbnb is really kicking at their door? And I had a friend that went to one of the hotel conventions, the national conventions. He said that for the first 3 hours, all they talked about was Airbnb. That was all they talked about, was how to compete against Airbnb.
Okay, so here's the answer. The answer, in my opinion, is Polaroid, Kodak, they all knew digital cameras were coming. So why didn't they make moves? Well, the answer is because if you're in a corporate job and your boss is in a corporate job and his boss is in a corporate, you're not going to go, wait a second, I want to do something that'll get me, annoying everybody and get me fired. And nobody wants to rock the boat. However, I foresee things like that in some hotels. There's always going to be a need for places like that. But eventually, as residential suites, or they'll knock down a wall and make it an Airbnb-ish kind of thing. Airbnbs, I'm sorry, hotel chains are now advertising on Airbnbs. Yeah.
Oh, no, I saw that. Yeah, we're a hotel. Yeah, I mean.
So it's all going to mush whatever together.
Mush in together.
Mush in together.
But I've seen timeshares are now listing on Airbnb.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, 6-7 years ago, we got our timeshare in VRBO in the PH Suites, whatever, the PH Towers in Las Vegas.
Right.
Beautiful. Had a bedroom for my kids, a bedroom for my wife, had a kitchenette going down to the pool. I mean, it was fantastic. Now, I will tell you, back at that time, they said, come pick up your free gift over at the courtesy
give us a
table.
timeshare tour.
And I was like, no, I don't need my free gift. And I kept getting calls and calls on the phone. And
no speaking English.
No, I did not pick up the phone.
Because I knew,
now, that was not a requirement of the booking. But
it was a strong encouragement.
It was because the person who books it for you owns their timeshare.
Oh.
And instead of the timeshare company saying, we're not going to let you sub it out to anybody, they figure, well,
we'll just market to them.
We'll market to them, right? So I bet you they get about 3/4 of the people, but not us. I was just.
Well, I got to ask two things. I want to come back to residential real estate, what's really going on in the Hot Springs Village, but I want to come back to before that, Airbnbs. Why? What is the fascination with Airbnbs? What do you think it is? Why are people? And I used the analogy a minute ago. You could at one of ours, you could look at the lake versus looking at a parking lot out back.
Yeah.
Is it for the experiences? Is that what
well,
the millennials
I know
are
that
looking
some
for?
people that are smokers want to smoke out on their porch. They can't smoke inside.
Yeah.
So in a hotel, how long is it going to take you to get to the porch?
Yeah, I'll take the elevator, go downstairs,
you want
just
to
have a
pull
2-minute
right
smoke.
up, which is really good. And you want a nice living room experience. So the value is there of getting a bigger space. Some people will accept one dog.
Yeah.
And some people like that for the reason that has a dog. Or on Thanksgiving, they want a big group of people.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's not hotels that are going to be as close to the lake with a kayak like yours is. So it's boutique needs for people that are staying.
It's so I want a unique experience. That's not cookie cutter. It's not one of the 80 rooms in a really nice Marriott.
Yeah. And how long would it take at any hotel how long would it take you to find out how much it would be to stay there 25 days? How long would it take you to get an Airbnb? Boom, boom. Oh, Dennis is offering a special 3 weeks or more. They'll be able to tell. Yeah. Or you put in the calendar and it'll tell you the price right there. So you're going to look for hotels doing that. Online service, book.
But booking a hotel room is a lot like, bring it back to real estate in some ways, but booking a hotel room is a lot like buying a car. How much is it? How much you got?
Yeah.
What do you got to spend
It'll
today?
be more standardized in the future. It's becoming that way.
Think so?
When you go online, everybody's all within the same rates.
Yeah.
However, here's a tip. When you go to a place, call the front desk at a hotel room if you're at the last minute.
It's always cheaper at the front desk.
Well, a lot of times, especially if you call up and say, hey, I'm going to come in for tonight for 4 nights. I'm looking for a deal under $100. Your rack rate or your corporate rate is $129. Would you be able to do something there? and you talk to the right people.
We stayed at one of the courtyards in Nashville on a Tuesday night, and we were just shopping it, you know, like Expedia or something like this. And I think it was Priceline or something like this. And you could just make an offer, you know. And the rack rate was like 100, and rack rate, if you don't know what a rack rate is, that's if you call and say, how much is your room tonight? Just off the cuff, they'll go, 149, you know, and everybody haggles down from that, essentially, is what it comes to. But we made an offer of like $39, and they accepted it. And we were staying at one of the Marriotts.
Is that through Priceline or something?
Yeah, through Priceline. But it's like a Tuesday night. It's not a Friday night. You know, it's all about demand, which that makes sense. I understand. But you can get the spot bargains here and there, especially. And we don't leave the house with a reservation anywhere.
Right.
We get in the car and start driving. And
well, yield management is a little different with a hotel because you don't have the cleaning fees, you know, that tacked on afterwards, and you were saying about the rack rate is that once you're booked, if you have only 2 units, 2 houses for vacation rentals, you're either, you know, at 50% or 100.
Yeah.
Whereas a regular hotel can see that fluctuation going down and make accordingly.
They've got 80 rooms to
exactly.
to deal with. Their database structure so they can sample is a lot
So their
bigger.
yield management is just a whole different marketing model in the hotel. I tend to think that they're more apt to take a lower price one. They already have the cleaner working the floor.
Yeah, it's not like they've got to pay another $50 for them to come in and clean
where
one
you
or
got to
whatever.
find someone in the turnaround.
Well, now, so for the resort side of the casino and all this, I call it a real synergy. I mean, I really think we've hit a stride that we haven't seen probably in 50 years.
But I would worry about adding another hotel into this town. I think the Arlington is going to be restored. I don't see how it cannot be.
300 and something rooms?
Right, yeah. You have the old Army-Navy hospital.
Which, that would be magnificent.
That might be I mean, I'm pure speculation 20 years from now. Residence / Airbnbs / school. I don't know.
It's a crying
now,
shame.
there's lousy parking up there, but remember this, folks.
Oh, that's right.
Does it matter in 10 years when you have self-parking cars?
And self-driving cars,
yeah. I don't
That's
think
a very good point. It really is.
So we have to look into the future. Hot Springs is worried about finding places to put parking garages, but my feeling is we're going more toward leasing of cars instead of owning them in the future, and we're going more toward calling up any car and having it come pick you up and drive you wherever. Now, if that's the case, then we need to not worry about looking at parking garages too much.
Well, I think part of the problem is, and I'll share this with our visitors if you haven't been downtown, as you go down Bathhouse Row, on the left-hand side you have the National Park. Literally, the yellow stripe is the dividing line. John knows this, that the left-hand side is the National Park. I say left-hand side, you assume which way I'm going. On the right-hand side is the city, and there's a row of buildings that the Hill Whateleys have owned and for whatever. Walk into any of those buildings and look at the brick on the wall, and there's an arch.
Yeah, because they had the horses.
That's where they had the carriages that went through. And you're saying horse and carriage? Those arches are just as pertinent as the garages are today.
That's a good point.
We don't need those arches anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because we don't use horse and carriage going down the streets anymore. We use cars, and we got to have a place to park them. And that was really, frankly, I think, there was a part probably between the 60s and 70s where downtown Hot Springs suffered because it was, well, we got to get in our car. We got to get in our car. And it was such a car society.
Yeah.
And as that car society maybe goes away, you know, we're going to see a different visitor, a visitor that's not so car bound.
Right. I mean, if you look at the Hot Springs Documentary Film Festival, I was looking at, you know, I know a lot of people in town or know of people in town. So you're like, I recognize these people.
Yeah.
Didn't recognize a lot of people. And by the way they dress, you could say, oh, they're from California, they're from Brazil. So we're getting a lot of people from other places in town by means of the Hot Springs Music Festival, the Documentary Film Festival,
Jazz Fest.
even the Tattoo Festival. People are coming from other places. I didn't know anything about tattoos. I have none. This great, you know who this guy is? He's here, you know, whatever.
This is the master. You're like,
yeah, I'm going to drive in from Missouri for this guy, you know.
Right.
And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Now, if you come from an area where housing prices are $320,000 to start, and you come here and say, wow, I can get one for $99.
A remodeled one for $99.
By calling John Cooksey at 501-318-4117.
What was that number again, John? 501
318-4117.
Yeah, that's what
I
thought.
You call me and say, John, I'm looking for a house in the $100,000 range. I'll say, well, first let's decide what part in town that you want to be near historic downtown, you want to be near more to farmland, you want to be more near the lake, you know, you want to be out. So once we establish that, you start looking for houses. Now, oh, well, I want a commercial building downtown and I have $100,000. You're not going to get that. But I remember the days when you could. Well, the Black Orchid for years was like $100,000. I'm like, that seems like a good deal.
How much was Low Key Arts?
60,000.
Really?
Yeah.
That was a great.
I don't know why
I didn't know if you knew or not.
Yeah, well, of course they put in all air conditioning. It was just a brick shell, but yeah.
Cool building now.
Even where the reptile thing is going to go.
The aquarium or whatever.
Until like 5 years ago, that was $60,000 for that piece of land.
On Bathhouse Road.
And well, it's not on Bathhouse Road, but
it's the one right.
Yeah, but it's a block away. And I remember thinking I should maybe invest in that. That's a good deal.
I'm telling you. Well, there are investments on the ground there, but once again, $100,000 for a livable, nice home.
Oh yeah, in this town.
And people you're just crazy. That's unheard of.
You can get that.
That's because you've lived in distorted value areas.
But here's the thing. In 1964, gambling left town. They said, no more gambling, you know.
It didn't leave town, it got kicked out. Thank you, Governor Faubus.
Okay, right? So was it Rockefeller?
It was Faubus. Oh, it was Rockefeller.
Okay.
It was Rockefeller, yeah.
So Faubus was like, yeah, let it run.
They have pictures of Betty Faubus in the vapors in the back room, and they're like, the governor's wife.
And it was weird because if the feds were going to fly in or whatever, there was enough people at the airports and whatever to tip them.
No. Do you know how it was?
No.
Who knows where Crows, Arkansas is, outside Hot Springs Village? As soon as you turn and you're going out Highway 5, there's a corner of Highway 5 and 9 is Crows Station.
That's where they came.
And they had a guy, there was a documentary on this on AETN. They had a guy at Highway 5, and it was his only job was he stayed at the station, and he saw the cops coming by with the state police coming by with their lights on, and he was like, hey, they're coming. And that gave him about 20 minutes.
25 minutes,
yeah. Because there wasn't an interstate at that time. Yeah. He had to come down Highway 5.
Yeah, so after 64, there was this big exodus, and also when they moved the hospital in 90 or 89, everybody moved down there. And when they developed the lake, everybody moved down there. And when everybody saw the paradigm that the lake is no longer trailers and we can have nice houses, which happened in the 70s and 80s
or
through
little
90s.
Lake cabins turned into $1 million mansions.
Yeah, exactly, because in the 70s there was a lot of pollution in the lake, sewers going right into them. Then everything, giant sucking sound from the downtown area and Park Avenue, and it got this bad reputation of, oh my gosh, Park Avenue.
But such incredible Victorian homes here,
I know,
John.
but now people are going, I want to live in Park Avenue.
Oh yeah, what's the Frank Lloyd Wright, the craftsman style look?
Well, they just want to live here. You know why? Because it's a neat, hip community where everybody talks to each other and
a lot of arts.
And a lot of arts. It's close to downtown, and it's a good value for your money. So you can buy a house for $100,000 in this area and fix it up. If you look, sometimes you can get them for 50 or 60. I mean, 10 years ago, I was buying them for $37,000 and putting 25 into them.
I got to say, John, from any outside viewer on the national media, this is going to sound insane. Really?
Well, you have to wait for them to come along. And even before I was a realtor, I was able to look online and see what was popping up, and I'd run over and see it. I got some tremendous stories. I bought a house with a pool that across the street was the National Forest Park, and nobody else was on that stretch of land for a third of a mile. And it was sitting empty by itself. And it was abandoned and ceilings were falling. And I got all excited when I went to see it because I'm like, this will scare away a lot of people. And so I bought 1.5 acres, a house with a pool for $50,000. Pool had frogs in it and overgrowing, And
Beside the point.
And then I put another, probably another 60 into it. So about 110. And I had a vacation rental for 10 years. Why did I get out of the vacation rental? My kids got older. I didn't have anybody to sweep all the leaves in the pool.
And get the toads
because
out of the pool.
when you're there in that forested area and you have a big storm come in,
it's a natural area.
Yeah,
literally
you
a
have
natural
to.
area.
If a storm's coming in, you have to go by and dump in bleach right away. You can't have even your pool guy or pool girl. They're not going to have enough time to get over there. So I would do that a lot, and it was okay. And I just after 10 years, the kids grew up. They didn't want to swim in the pool when nobody was there. They didn't care. Sure. It was just time to move on.
Well, and we talked about our Airbnbs a minute ago, and we're doing really well, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's really a lot of work. If you're not a people person, if you're not able to meet people and greet people and engage them, people, I ask you, why do people want Airbnb experiences? Well, I'll tell you what my answer is. We give people unique links. We tell them to go to Rolando's. Right. We tell them to go to the third floor in the back deck, and it's a speakeasy, and it's a turn-of-the-century speakeasy. And
that's why they like that, because sometimes over a hotel, the person, the sole proprietor of an Airbnb is going to be much more up on things than somebody behind a desk who's,
just checking numbers. Or who may not even be in the same town.
Yeah. I mean, there's some great hotels, and the new DoubleTrees coming in on the lake, that'll always do well. That Courtyard by Marriott has the best conference room, I think, in the whole. It's smaller, but it's not as big as the Arlingtons. But in the whole city, it's just beautiful, low ceilings, perfect acoustic. Nice desk. It's just gorgeous.
100 people, 50 people, 80
Yeah,
people?
maybe about 120 people. You can walk outside, and in the cold weather, they have a fire going with little fire pits and a nice walking path.
It's got all the Marriott touches.
But I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of Marriotts, and I haven't seen one that looks as nice as this, where the conference room flows into this area out there. It's pretty quiet back there.
I want to ask you, Diane and I were at the Waters the other day, and they were saying they were getting ready to open the bar on the top floor.
That's going to be beautiful.
Have they done that yet?
No, but they were going to do it soon. However, the Waters is a beautiful place, because talk about location, you get 100% with them right downtown.
Well, now
and the Hale.
And to just be frank about it, and make clear real quick, the front of the Waters, what was it before? It was the Hartford building, or what was the? I'm trying to think.
The name will come to me.
It's etched in the top of the building, and I'm trying to remember what it was. But the only thing they used it for was to sell for probably 15 years. They sold boat duck tickets out of it.
Because remember, it was easier to build out than build up as a general rule.
Right.
Mainly because you have handicap accessibility issues,
you have the ADA,
and then you have fire suppression systems, but also you have elevators that you have to work with.
Right. Well, but it's a gorgeous building, but they use the front hallway to sell tickets.
But this is why we know Hot Springs is doing well. They're building up now.
Yeah.
And when you start building up instead of out, when you see Washita Avenue, which is building out too, and at the same time building up, we have definitely a gem that is on the upswing and not on the downswing.
Now, and for example, I love Squeezebox Brewery and Pizza.
Yeah.
And upstairs, they've got the radio station. I've never been up now. Bob works there or has a show there. That's an example of building up there too. I have some customers.
So they have, it is on the ground floor to the left, but the wine bar across the street, that was my old office back in the day, and they built that, and so Washita they start putting street lamps there. I predict it's just going to be a whole part of
a whole new corridor
downtown. Now you then tie that downtown in all the way down to Ramble Street on Park, and now you have a whole corridor. You got to start burying electric lines on Park. I would like to see that.
Yeah, I think that's the case too. And it's funny you should say that. And we talk about burying electric lines in the village. All the power lines, all the local ones are buried.
Yeah.
And we can't do that. Well, you did it in the village. You could do it.
Well, the village did it when they built the village. So it is harder, but not impossible.
No.
And if electricity goes down, you're more apt to keep your electricity if it's underground.
Sure. Well, yeah. I have a site. I don't know if you know this. I have Underground Power for Arkansas on Facebook.
Wow.
And because when we had the bad storm, 10, 11 years ago or whatever, it was like, why are we doing this? I mean, I was sitting in a warm, toasty house, looking at Facebook and seeing everybody else who was just out of power, and I'm like, I've got underground power. Why can't you? But the postcards from back in the 40s and 30s showed all these hundreds of strands of power lines going up and down Central.
I know.
And that was a sign of prosperity because we had power in Hot Springs.
And if you look carefully, there was probably some illegal taps off.
There could have been an illegal tap.
It's like India, they have
it looked like India.
Yeah. And but also the telephone system was a big thing. Imagine back in the day, we have 120 people you could call, because they would write the central hub and they would wire down the street, and each person would get a wire, and maybe you'd get a party line off that wire, and you'd have to share it. We couldn't imagine a party line today, could we?
No, we couldn't.
So I think people are going to be moving here. We're like America's best kept secret because there's no flash to us. We're not like, we're the home of Disney World, we're the home of the golf championship, we're the home. And so we are a hidden gem because we don't have one big, oh, I know that now. We have a lot of little big things. Documentary Film Fest, Music Fest, Jazz Fest.
Yeah.
You have all the food fests, and you have the Valley of the Vapors.
Well, what's the concerts out at the airport that they put on? Those are awesome. You know, the convention center or the convention bureau puts on a couple of concerts a year. Oh, no, I can't believe, John, we're forgetting the shortest parade.
The shortest, and the bathtub races. So we're a bunch of these little things, but it's better to be a bunch of little things. Now imagine if you're a part of the country and everybody knew you for the golf course for whatever, PGA, and then they just pull out one day, then the whole place, just like everybody knew us for the gambling, and then we left. So the more diversified, education-wise, we should be diversified.
I hadn't thought about it. We're actually, it's a stronger, wider base.
Yeah.
Because I'm having visitors that are coming in that are going to the bike trails. I'm having visitors that come and go to Oaklawn, which is kind of rare. One of the misconceptions about the village is that we have people come stay, they're like, oh, everybody just comes and plays golf. I'm like, no,
and you don't want to depend on the trend is the younger people are not going to be playing golf. Now, my brother lives in Santa Monica, beautiful area, and would you believe that Google has a campus down there? No sign, nothing.
In Santa Monica?
Yeah, he drove me by and said, look at that door, look at that little security guard, and everybody goes in, look at the back with all the bicycles. So they have one in Santa Monica. They don't want to advertise it, but you can imagine the rents and prices in Santa Monica.
It's astronomical. Actually, two things. A realtor friend of mine in the village said that her son just bought in San Francisco. And quote, and she didn't mean it this way, but she really said this exact word. She said, God help him if something happens to the economy because we can't bail him out.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's got such a house, such a load. And I told her, I said, the irony is that he's not buying a house, he's buying money.
You know what?
He's buying rent, buying the mortgage, you know, and praying that it keeps evaluating.
You know, you have earthquake insurance and just the insurance on a house, and the taxes are going to be expensive. But what worries me most about San Francisco is what guarantee if you're owning and not renting that another 100-year earthquake or 1901 earthquake comes through? What would happen if that's like one of the key infrastructures of our digital silicon thing? What
are they, the sixth largest economy in the
I don't know. I mean,
California itself
I just think that they need to have fire drills. They need to have fire drills for what happens if our servers go down and this goes down, and how do we get back online? Because a lot of those people, you say, okay, so let's say Facebook is running out of there. Well, that's okay. Nobody needs Facebook. Really? If a lot of people are advertising in that, putting maps on there, putting their real estate on there, putting whatever, it's a lot larger than just a cute social network.
Sever a few hundred digital fiber cables and see how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see how that works.
Or email. What if they use messaging through that? What about Google? What about Google Messenger? So I hope they're doing, quote, fire drills or earthquake
data
drills.
Data recovery,
because you say, well, let's pretend this happened. Let's run this scenario. Where's our backups? Where's our thing? Because sometimes, just like the 737 MAX airplane, it's not until people die that you go, oh yeah, we do need a redundant system on the angle of attack indicator.
We didn't beta test that very well, did we?
Well, the sad part is they did, and they said, well, it's going to cost too much money. That'll be an option to have a redundant angle of attack indicator. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because this one won't ever act up.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's not going to be. And if they did, the pilots will just do this.
Yeah.
So you can't assume. You can only really seriously run scenarios. And, you know, and look what happened at Katrina. Do you know how many people moved to Hot Springs?
You know, it's funny. This morning, I showed my brother and my sister and brother-in-law a huge overlook that looks down on Cortez Lake. $90,000, 2 lots, $90,000 a piece for the lots. So $180K. And they said, who would spend that kind of money? And it's a beautiful view out over Lake Cortez. Who would spend that kind of money? I said, a guy that came up from Katrina and didn't want to get flooded anymore.
Yeah,
didn't want to have another hurricane. Didn't want to have another crisis or disaster.
It really, I hate to say it, but it helped our economy.
It was a shot in the arm.
It was a shot in the arm.
And it's so unfortunate for them. It was a tragedy. It really was. But I think there has to be, and this is just back to real estate again, there has to be a reckoning between the flyover zones and the coast.
Yeah.
And it cannot get more disparate. It is, we talk about, maybe there's going to be a standard income or a minimum income. I hear people talk about a $15 an hour minimum wage, and I'm thinking, in a city, I see that.
Right.
In South Arkansas, I know people that own businesses that don't make $15 an hour.
Yeah.
So, it's such a different world in these places.
Well, let's suppose it goes to $15 an hour and people have more money. Will that bring up what we have now? Or
will it simply increase the cost of everything else?
And it might. But if you're used to paying that in a big city and you move here, you're not going to notice the difference. The people that notice the difference will be here for years. Now, I moved here in 1991. You know what I think the first shot in the arm we had? Clinton's presidential campaign. Because I came from Hope, Arkansas. I came from Hot Springs, Arkansas. And so these people would be stopping. Where's his home? And where's
his house at?
Oh, exactly.
Just down the way here.
And everybody would say, 1991, Arkansas, what's out in Arkansas? And his opponents would have pictures of these fields and a barn out in the middle of nowhere. Because before YouTube, you didn't go, I'm going to turn on my TV and see what Hot Springs really is like.
Yeah.
Couldn't see it.
Sure.
You had to come down and go, oh, this is not a barn in a field.
Oh, this is a place called Hope.
Yeah. And I had to tell you, somebody came up to me at the film festival and said, I had to introduce myself. My name is Tom, and we're living somewhere else, but I grew up here. My kids and everything didn't want to go back. But Hot Springs Broadcast Network is practically a third of the reason why we're here. Part of it is job, part of it's family. But when we all saw the growth, and we were following in a Hot Springs Broadcast Network, so
back then we had no way. Cool. We had no way to do that. But I'm going to give you the example. I'm going to pull up a historic example. Abraham Lincoln, believe it or not, his ad campaign. There was an ad campaign, really, and his ad campaign was "Born in a Log Cabin." And Clay, who was his opponent, said, I wasn't born in a log cabin, but I sure wish I was. Oh. Because it looked so good to be, just like Clinton, born in a homey little area. He lived literally a couple of blocks from here.
Yes, he did.
And walked down to the Malco and would, after school and, all this. So it literally was his stomping grounds. And it was something people could touch.
Right.
It really was a great area.
Right. And there's other places I was in the New York area, and not New York City per se, but certain areas. There's a pollution factor on bad, hot days. Yeah. I haven't really had that at all since 91.
You haven't run into that, have you?
No. I had where you get a little bit of a headache.
I had a friend call me one time and say, well, this is really nice, but what's the pollution like? And I was like, well, about 1.5 miles from our house, there's 1.7 million acres of national forest that seems to kind of filter that out.
Yeah.
And the predominant winds are from that direction.
Though I will say, one day or 2 days in the 28 years I've lived here, we had the paper mill down in, Pine Bluff.
Pine Bluff.
The wind just hit it right, and the whole town smelled like,
And do you know why it doesn't do that anymore?
No.
They used to make acid-based paper, and now they make alkaline-based paper. They changed it from an acid-based where it would literally deteriorate. Wow. But but we used to make alkaline paper all the time. Then they went to acid-based paper, which made dioxins, which they decided it was easier to make alkaline papers again that don't make dioxins and last another 100 years.
And it's better than the environment.
It's better on the environment, and it doesn't smell like dirt. It doesn't smell awful.
Bad. It was like old socks.
Oh, it was horrible. Yeah. I remember living in Little Rock, and I would go, Mom, Dad, what's that? Well, that's Pine Bluff. I'm like, how far away? Well, it's about 60 miles. I'm like, 60 miles and it still stinks?
Yeah.
But back to that point I wanted to say, I have a friend in the village who moved from Dallas not too long ago. And we were talking about little jobs and trinkets and cute little cups and little digital gadgets. And he said, it's amazing what you can do with $15,000 a year. And a friend of mine said, what do you mean $15,000 a year? And he said, that's how much I saved in taxes by moving to Hot Springs Village.
Sure.
And I just take that for, our rentals are $150,000, $200,000 properties, and it's like $80 a month in taxes. Yeah, and they were paying $1,000.
Yeah, with the Homestead Act, you might pay $500 a year here. And my friend said $500 a month, right? I go, no, this is back when it was 5 or 6. We bought our house for $64,000 in 1991 or 2. Right. So the taxes are low, and a friend of mine in Easton, Connecticut, old little farmhouse, a small piece of land.
Very high prices.
$16,000 a year in taxes.
And a small, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The farmhouse might be, 1,400 square feet.
But $16,000, that's like $1,200 or $1,300 a month, which is a rent for a really nice house here.
Yeah, the house that they're paying could rent that here, yeah. And then you have the New York City tax where he works, and then you have the train fee that you have to pay every day, you know, $10 or $12 to take the train and then drive in the car to the train station.
Well, it's like the reporter I was telling you about. He made a good money, but he didn't have any of it to spend.
Yeah.
You know, it literally it was so expensive to live there that he didn't get ahead, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So I think people can get ahead here. We had a mail order house for a number of years selling video accessories and training videos on DVD, and it was great to live here and make your money off the whole United States.
I remember I wanted you to bring that up. I'm glad you did, and that's nearly enough for its own show. But you know, the glossy magazines we used to get back in the '90s that would say, you know, this camera for this much, or B&H, what'd you call them? What is it? Beards and hats.
Beards and hats. Yeah,
Beards
because
and
they have
hats.
beards and hats. Yeah.
B&H, which is a Jewish-owned company, and they're great people. I love them.
I see them. They're great guys. Yeah.
They are great guys. I went to buy something this last week from them, and it said they were closed for Sukkoth or something, and I'm so Jewish.
We would do wonders during their closed weeks.
Yeah, they were closed this last week.
Well, they would call us. We would like brace yourself because they couldn't get through to B&H, and we were a mini B&H.
B&H just closes because they're in the very religious organization when they say they're open.
Yeah, we had a catalog that we sent out 150,000 catalogs a year.
Oh my
So 15,000 a month in newsletters before the internet, and people would read it and people would buy stuff, and you would answer the phone to make a sale. Well, that allowed you to say, oh, you're in that. Oh, and you need to, do you have a wireless mic now? Oh,
what are you doing for your wireless mic solution?
Yeah. And so the upsell ability was amazing.
But see, now what you're saying, we call them digital nomads, but you were a financial nomad at that time. You didn't have to be in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
True.
You didn't have to be at B&H in New York.
I would say we were a precursor of a digital nomad because our product was, in a sense, digital, a DVD.
Right.
You know, on digital cameras with training.
Woo, digital camera.
But so we were a bit of a nomad, an economic nomad. Sure, yeah. Why we could travel anywhere. When we were buying houses, they're like, okay, so how are you going to make your money again moving from Connecticut to here? Because our income comes from all over. We had to write 3 or 4 pages explaining it. They couldn't understand that you would sell videotapes all over the country.
You have a mail order company, and
right?
you can be anywhere?
You think about the amount of people, 7 to 8 average over 6, 7, 8 years that we employed that brought income to these people in Arkansas from people all around the country. It wasn't just me. Arkansas was helped by all those customers calling in from everywhere else. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely.
You know, yeah, it brought money into the economy. These people pay taxes, we pay taxes.
Right, sure. Well, and I wanted to make another personal note here, if I can, real quick. This is the show I've been wanting to do for years, John. I say years. You might think that John and I have known each other for 20 years or known each other. We haven't known each other that long, but we have so much in common. And Hot Springs.
We will have discussions like this all the time without the mic.
We will wear you. If you find this interesting, we can bore you to tears.
We could spend another 5 hours.
Houston, you're a patient man. I appreciate you staying with us.
Thank you. Yeah.
But this is the show I've been wanting to make. I thank you, John. It's been great. I thank you for your studio, your hospitality.
It's a lot of time. You'll have to divide up the sections probably.
This is one big long show.
Yeah.
We'll have a lot of fun.
Well, and if you I will say, I don't know, we can't put the bottom on the screen right now, but it's 501-318-4117. I normally don't wear sunglasses, but the only ones I had here in the studio today. But I can show you, as a realtor, some houses in Hot Springs. Hot Springs Realty is a great company that I work with. I'm really in touch with
long-standing, strong company.
Oh,
great
yeah.
Guys.
And so, you know, we can 501-318-4117.
Like it says under the screen right here.
There you go.
I'm going to put down here.
Yeah, give me a call, and I'd be happy to show you some houses in town or talk to you about in more detail where the town's going and what kind of buildings are out there.
And if it's not clear to you yet, John is a networker, and that's how we're working together. Right. I mean, the sister program.
This town is great about that.
It really is. Because it's not too big.
Yeah.
It's big enough that there's still people you haven't met, but they're small enough that you know a lot of people.
So come on, move here, people. Yeah.
We'd love to have you. Thanks for another episode of Hot Springs Village Venues. It's been a pleasure. Thanks again. Houston, you are one patient man, my friend.
That went long.